Serious, what was your first traumatic experience? Attention. Serious tag notice jokes, puns, and off-topic comments are not permitted. https://www.reddit.com/r/askreddit/wiki/windex/wiki_rule 6. In any comment, parent or child, parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed, along with their child replies. Report comments that violate these rules. Posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour, and posts that are not appropriate for the serious tag will be removed. Consider doing an AMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation and enjoy the discussion. I'm a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit /message/compose/to=r/askreddit if you have any questions or concerns. Losing my mum at 9. She was raising me mostly by herself, and my birth father was not part of my life ever. She was in hospital for something that should have been simple, but she had to stay overnight. The next morning my mum's partner and my uncle, mum's brother, turned up at the partner's parents' place where I was. I was all excited because I only got to see my uncle for birthdays and Christmas. Then they sat me down and told me what happened. First time I know I just burst into tears. No build up or anything, just heard the words from my uncle and I started crying. Been over 25 years now, and I still get choked up, and I struggle watching any show about foster kids or losing mums to this day. Also, I visit her grave every year on her birthday. I saw a family of 6 get into a bad car wreck on the interstate Easter Sunday of 2nd grade. Got a good 5-second view of a contorted body of a woman who got thrown out a windshield. Shot burnt into my brain and desensitized the F out to 7 years old me. Fast forward 10 years and I watched a classmate of mine get smacked by a pickup truck in front of my house while he was on a bike. Ran to him, and he was obviously already dead and his abdomen was basically jello. I stayed with him until the ambulance took him somehow out of the whole experience. The worst thing about it was me trying to explain to my mom why I had blood up to my elbows. When I was 11 years old, my best friend passed out at swim meet. Me and my friends at first thought she was fine, but 2 days later, we were brought to the hospital to visit her. She was in a coma and completely unrecognizable. Her parents told us to try to talk to her because she might be able to hear us, but all we could do was cry. She died later that day. I don't think anyone knew how to properly help a bunch of 11-year-olds grieve. My mother was abusive emotionally and physically during my younger years. One time, I didn't sing her happy birthday when I was 7, and so she locked me in a room and bent me over to cane me repeatedly. Now obviously to a 7-year-old this was super high-end pain, and I was screaming and crying hysterically, and it became a blur. All I remember was my grandparents banging on the door and threatening to call the police. My sister tried to commit suicide when I was 7 by cutting her arms, legs and neck with a razor blade. My older cousins found her and hauled her into the driveway. Me and my sister grabbed towels for my parents. We waited 20 minutes for an ambulance. She survived and was sent to a group home. One of my first memories actually. I think I was 3, but may have still been 2. My mom and dad were arguing, and then my dad slammed my mom's face into the corner of the TV. These were the old wooden cabinets TVs. Nearly drowning at 5 years old. I don't remember a lot when I was that age, but I remember that pretty vividly. I was walking around a pool, filling a Coke can, and pouring it on the concrete lines. I went to fill it up and slipped in. I remember struggling to get out but just never could. The next thing I remember is being cradled in my mother's arms and thinking what happened. My mom put me in swimming lessons shortly after that. It was a mental one. I was very young and I woke up to my dad yelling at my mom while she was sobbing for what felt like an eternity over the fact that she bought herself a lighter and didn't buy him one. They both smoke. It was from then on that I noticed my dad was an alcoholic and he hated us. I've had another loss 4 months prior, but honestly the worst was dealing with the 13 days of my dad being diagnosed with a rare form of lymphoma. To his death that quick We didn't know he had cancer and it spread so rapidly. The whole side of his family had cancer BTW. I was 15. 2 years ago. And it was honestly a horrible and early age to deal with it. I talk about my experience with loss whenever I have the chance to, and sometimes I feel like I'm seeking attention for it. But honestly, it's how I cope. Had a babysitter hold my left hand against a lid burner because I was coloring with the wrong hand. Joys of being left-handed. When I was a kid I was walking with my dog through this big field with very tall grass. As we are walking, all her hair stands up on end and she jumped in front of me right as a big coyote came charging out of the grass at us. It was bigger than her, but she put up a heck of a fight. The sound of animals fighting is horrible. I was just frozen with fear. After a few seconds, that felt like minutes, she got the upper hand and turned the coyote on its heels and chased it off before doubling back to me. I had never seen a wild animal aggressive like that, and it scared the hell out of me. The next day we found the coyote dead. Up close I could see that it was missing hair and seemed to have a very bad case of mange. I felt kinda bad for it actually. I had seen coyotes before, and they always sprinted in the opposite direction. This one must have been really sick and desperate to go after my dog. As I type this out 14 years later, I'm happy to report that my dog is currently happily sleeping on my bed. She's a great dog, and even though she's slowed down with age, she still stands up tall and raises her hackles whenever she hears the coyotes yelping in the woods behind my house. I think she's still ready for round 2. When I was younger, like maybe 5 or 6, I was playing around with my brother in my bedroom, who just learned how to walk. So we're just playing in there, and my brother lost his balance and his fell on the sharp edge of my bed frame. The edge is so sharp it punctured a hole on my brother's head. He cried while blood was dripping down his head. My parents busted through the door and rushed him to the ER. He has a little scar on his head to this day. My last foster mother gave me a reason to splash in the tub. Guess my 3 or 4 year old self needed taught not to splash water. She held my face underwater for what seemed a lot longer than it probably was. My mom took my dad and I to the park, where she was planning on telling him that she was leaving him. I was told to wait in the car as I heard them yelling at each other. My mom then opened the car door, told me she loved me, and left me and my dad there. We tried looking for her, but couldn't find her. Watching my mom walk away and out of my life at 7 years old gave me horrible separation anxiety. On the night before my last day of 3rd grade, my mom sent me to bed early because we were going to Joga Lake, local amusement park, as an end of year school trip. Being way too excited to sleep, I laid awake in bed to hear my dad arrive home drunk. I crept to the top of the stairs and listened to the progressively more angry voices. Him and my mom got in a fight where he pushed her. Thankfully didn't cause any injuries. The cops got called and my dad was arrested that night. I don't think my younger brother or sister heard any of it, but it was my first realization that my dad was an alcoholic. It would take a couple more years to fully realize what that meant. Felt like I was dying when I caught H1N1 swine flu in 2009 pandemic. Maybe I was. Could not breathe properly and had an autoimmune reaction that ruined my life. Left me with constant chronic severe leg pain when I was barely into my teens. Those 3 weeks of having that flu were traumatic indeed. Found out 5 years later I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I was 5 years old and my grandma hit a car on the freeway. Both cars rolled, but the driver of the other car wasn't wearing his seatbelt. He fell out the open window while it was rolling and was effectively smeared on the pavement by either our car or his car. I remember sitting on the curb while a first responder was evaluating to see if I was okay. But more than anything I remember the wife of the deceased man was screaming in agony at her meat crayon husband. I told my family I didn't remember a thing from the accident because I didn't want them to worry. Coming up on 2 years in a few months, a homeless man committed suicide by kneeling in the middle of the road. It was 12:30 am. I was on my way back to work from lunch. He was wearing all black and I didn't even have time to press the brakes because there is little to no lighting near the port I work at. My guess is he was hoping for one of the many semi-trucks that go down that road, but instead he got me. Still don't like driving at night, but I'm the night guy, and I still have to drive that road. Physical. Got run over by a car when I was 4. Mental. Somewhere around 4. Stepfather was in a drunken rampage and was going to hit me. My dog bit him, so he strangled my dog to death in front of me. My parents were fighting. I was about 5 and my brother 7. Dad threw mum down the stairs and threw her university textbooks at her, grabbed her face and hit her multiple times. My brother and I were crying. Didn't know what to do, so we just watched. I went to a party in the woods one night like a bonfire and me and my friend were really drunk, then someone gave us some Xanax without us realizing it. We both took it, and the next thing I remember I wake up in a hospital bed. Most comfortable bed I've ever lain in, but I overdosed that night and had my stomach pumped. I couldn't eat a full meal without puking for like a week, and I had intense heartburn for a month. I still don't completely remember that night. I've been kind of ashamed of it, but figured this would help me get over it. When I was 9 years old I was almost kidnapped a block from my house. A van pulled over, and the passenger said "Hey come here," and then chased my friend and me. My friend was on his bike and got away easily. I ran for the corner and made it around. Luckily a neighbor was in their yard on the other side of a large hedge blocking the view of what was happening. The neighbor was deaf and didn't understand what I was upset about. I waited near the neighbor until the kidnappers got back in the van, then I sprinted home staying shielded from the street by going through people's yards / jumping fences etc. Flat out sprint during the last few hundred feet without cover to get to my parents' house. The whole time I was running I was just waiting to see the van turn the corner and figure out where I live. My deaf neighbor very likely saved my life just by being outside. I still remember touching the electric fence around the raspberry patch when I was 2 or so. It's my earliest memory. I'm studying to be an electrical engineer now. Go figure. Oh. Also spraying myself in the eyes with bug spray when I was maybe 3 or younger. I'd have to ask my mom. That wasn't fun. About 3 weeks before my 7th birthday, my best friend was murdered by her dad. He went nuts one day, killed the dog, cut up all the furniture, stabbed her 47 times, tried to kill her mom when she got home from work. It was completely out of the blue. He was a really great guy, never hit her or anything. He was non-vocal deaf, so no yelling either. But after he was sent to a mental hospital, it came out that he had been hearing voices, which had to be fucking horrible, since he'd been born deaf. My dad beat the S out of me when I was 7 years old because I told him I didn't like him singing to me when he woke me up for school. I'm about the same age he was when he did that to me, and I can't imagine having the arrogance to do that to a child. I'm Mexican, so I'm sorry if my English is bad. When I was around 6 years old I was constantly with my mom because she worked as a domestic employee and she didn't had enough money for a babysitter and she didn't have any people of trust at the time in the city. One day we were walking from the house where she worked to a bus stop in a highway where we waited around 3 minutes. Then everything here starts to get scurrilous. It was 2012 when drug war was really violent in Miami, with a drug cartel called Los Zetas fighting for the area with other drug cartels. We had so bad luck that a gunfight between Los Zetas and the army started there, with us being trapped in the middle of the gunfire. I remember I could see bodies and blood coming from the cartel cars. I was so scared, and my mom and sister were crying. The gunfight lasted like 2 minutes, but it felt like hours. Thankfully, none of us got harmed, and the army killed all of these guys. I was traumatized for months, but sadly, the constant violence was normal for me and didn't even got scared anymore. When I was about 8 I walked in on my dad pounding my mom from behind. First memory of existence, as far back as it goes. I remember being so small that the world looked huge. I was in the dining room because I loved crawling around under the chairs. Hear a bang and it's mom being thrown against the wall by my dad. I remember running over, laughing and giggling because I thought it was a game. I grabbed at his leg to play along. While he hit her, he turned around and punched me in the stomach. Hard. It was the strangest feeling because my mom started screaming, but I couldn't hit her. I fell on my butt, and what was weird was I didn't cry. I didn't even register it as an injury, even though it hurt so much. I just remember I couldn't breathe in as much as I wanted to. I kept trying, and every time I got some air down, I'd use it to laugh a little. Gulp of air, wide eyes, little giggle. It was such a bizarre response, but I can remember it clear as I'm sitting here. I just thought we were playing, and I got hurt and I wanted to keep playing, but I couldn't breathe. Sexual and physical abuse by my babysitter, or coming home to my cat dead in the street. I forget which happened first. 7 was a rough age. Physically molested / encouraged to be raped at 4 by my older cousin / older brother. Was made to believe it was my fault and blackmailed about it. Caused me a lot of shame growing up. And even now. I also remember my mom overdosing on Valium in the same time period. He survived. From as young as I can remember. 2. 5y. My BO dad physically, mentally and sexually abused me. I used to stay with him with my younger brother at weekends and some holidays. BO mum had no clue about it all as he threatened to kill us if we said anything. One of the most vivid memories I have is when he threw the coffee table into the fireplace, which set his flat on fire. I just remember running to get my brother and me out and getting a neighbor to call the police.